You're listening to Beyond the Measure, episode 26. Listen as I, a young choir director, and my husband, a young composer, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Measure. We are back. If you were listening to this episode as it is first released, you'll probably have noticed that, we have not been able to release any episodes for months. I think the last episode we released was all the way back in January, and it is late July, early August at the time of this being released. So, it's been a crazy year. You might remember from the last episode that we released, I was talking about ACDA and how that was coming up. I was going to be attending that conference. I did end up going and had a booth there, and it was an incredible experience for me, and it was a really fun thing. After that, soon after that, Kara had UIL, so she was super busy for that. And then we moved into a house. And then on top of everything else, it's hard to have guests on the show when, they're very busy people. And as all of you know, music educators are very, very busy people. So just a few different things that all kind of added together. But we decided we just wanted to wait until we were really in a good place to finally sit back down and really focus on making new episodes. And we are finally at that point. I'm excited to say that we already have recorded multiple interviews, and we'll be releasing those every 2 weeks from here on out. And we're going to continue having guests on as they come available. So that's actually the first thing I wanted to mention before we get into this week's episode, is that if you know of any guests that you would like to have featured on this podcast, or even if it was yourself and you think, I think I would enjoy being on this and there's a lot I'd like to share, just shoot me an email. My email is christian@christianfortnermusic.com, and just tell me a little bit about the person that you think would be good for the show. And if you happen to know their contact info and they've given you permission to give that to us, then that's something we'd be happy to look into and see if they'd be a good fit for our show. A couple things I want to mention, and then we'll get right into the episode so we don't waste too much time here. Couple of things. First of all, I have to do this because I promised all the way back in February that I would do this, and I can't go back on my promise. At ACDA, I met lots of cool people, and I actually met a lot of students that were currently attending universities, and one of them was a student named Raina from the University of Maryland, and she actually told me that her and her classmates have listened to this podcast before because they're actually encouraged to listen to music ed podcasts at the University of Maryland. So I thought that was super cool. Shout out to Raina. She's a music ed major, and she's also majoring in vocal performance. So it's kind of a double major there. And she really wants to teach middle school girls, especially. She feels called to do that. So Raina, if you're out there, thank you so much for listening. It was great meeting you at ACDA. Sorry, it's been months, but I told you I'd give you a shout out, and here it is. So that was a really fun thing at ACDA. You'll probably hear more about it in the coming episodes as well. Now, another thing we're actually wanting to start doing going forward is reading the reviews that y'all leave us for the show. So we really appreciate it when y'all leave a review. And if you haven't already, we would love it if you go ahead and leave it a review. I know like I said, it's been a while, but it's never too late to leave a review for the previous episodes you've already heard. And so today I thought I'd actually just start by reading one of the very first reviews we actually got on Apple Podcasts. I should say that you can leave a review on a lot of the different streaming platforms. So it's whichever one you prefer. It doesn't really matter, but this one just happened to be on Apple Podcasts. This was actually almost like over a year ago at this point, but nonetheless, still wanted to read it. It is from Hackster117, and it looks like this is actually someone that we went to school with at Hardin-Simmons. So if you're listening to this, you know who you are. Thank you very much. 5-star review titled Wholesome, Insightful, and Humorous. And it says, I studied music composition at university with both Christian and Kara, and I'm really glad they're doing this podcast. It's great to hear them offer their unique perspectives on music education and composition. As they mentioned in the first episode, there aren't many podcasts that address what it is like to be a young composer or music educator that are in the beginning stages of their careers. They're both talented musicians and great people. I'm excited to learn more about their journeys and how I can apply not only some of the lessons they've learned into my own musical life, but hear from other composers and educators as well. I look forward to hearing where the podcast goes. So thank you very much again, Hackster117. And again, leave us a review and you might be able to have it featured on the podcast. Another thing that we are adding to the podcast is actual show notes. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a while, and we just didn't quite have the system set up to do it. We've been putting descriptions and kind of a general summary about what our episodes are about each week that they release. But now we are actually going to have a Google Doc that there will be a link for in the description from here on out. That is actually a Google Doc of a summarized outline of all the big points that we hit that our guests talk about in each episode. So you can actually print it out and even share it with other people. You're more than welcome to share it with others, even if they're not listeners, just so you can have that as an extra little resource to help you with whatever subject it is that we happen to be talking about in that episode. So starting right now, you can look at the description and there'll be a link where you can download those show notes for this episode. Which finally brings us to this episode. So today's guest is Dr. Jeff Goolsby. Now, he is the head choir director at Abilene Christian University, which is literally right down the street from Hardin-Simmons University, where I work in Abilene, where Karen and I went to school. And HSU choir actually collaborated a lot with the ACU choir and the McMurray choir over the years. And so you'll hear a little bit about that at the beginning. I do have to preface this with, we actually recorded this interview all the way back. I think it was like late January of this year. And we just, again, with all that busyness I mentioned earlier, we never really got to actually sit down, edit it, and put it out there. So you might be listening to it right now as it releases and think, wait, this doesn't sound quite right timeline wise. And again, that's because we recorded it all the way back in January, but we didn't want that to be an excuse to just not release it at this point. So we're starting with Dr. Jeff Goolsby, and then we'll have some more recent interviews in the future. So let me read you his bio real quick, and then we'll get going on the interview. So Dr. Jeff Goolsby is the Director of Choral Studies at Abilene Christian University, where he leads a program dedicated to artistic excellence, transformational musical experiences, and high-impact community engagement. He conducts the university's premier choral ensemble, the A Cappella Chorus, and conducts the university chorale and oversees 3 student-led contemporary a cappella groups. The ACU choral music program engages students from diverse academic, social, racial, and economic backgrounds. More than half of the program is comprised of non-music majors, which is really cool. Dr. Goolsby teaches courses in choral conducting and choral methods and supervises the choral music education program. Prior to joining the ACU faculty, he taught for 10 years in successful high school choral music programs in the Dallas and Houston areas. Choirs under his direction have performed at notable venues in the United States and abroad. He is in demand as a clinician, consultant, and adjudicator throughout the state and has served in numerous regional and state capacities with TMEA, ACDA, and UIL. He holds degrees in choral conducting and music education from Texas Tech University, Louisiana State University, and Abilene Christian University, where he was named a university scholar. Professional affiliates include ACDA, NCCO, TMEA, TCDA, TMAA, and Pi Kappa Lambda. So this is our interview with Dr. Jeff Goolsby. We talk a lot about how we can innovate concerts. We no longer live in a day and age where just walking into a room, sitting down, and telling the audience to shut up and listen for an hour or more is viewed as a fun form of entertainment if it's only the element of sound. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. And so Dr. Goolsby talks a lot about in this interview about how he innovates a lot of his concerts, and there's a lot of good information in it. And we look forward to sharing everything that he had to say with us in this interview. So once again, thank you so much for your patience in waiting for these new episodes to come out. We are so excited to get going again. And without further ado, here is our interview with Dr. Jeff Goolsby. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, no, for those of y'all listening that aren't familiar with Abilene Christian University, and Jeff, you can introduce yourself a little bit more here in a minute, but you work at ACU, which is quite literally the next door neighbor of Hardin-Simmons, where we went to school. It is literally
just down the road.
Just down the road, yeah, and honestly, not even 5 minutes, like 3 minutes down the street. So one of the many college canvases we have here in town. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have known you two kind of from afar, I guess. I see your faces at various concerts and events around town, and know that you all are doing really good work, both at HSU and at Madison Middle School. So I think this thing that you're doing is really cool. I love the multifaceted approach to music that you're taking, right? We tell students now that music is not just one thing, or there's not just a concrete, predetermined career path, but they could do podcasts, they can compose, they can write, they can edit, they can do lots of things other than maybe what it says on their degree. So anyway, you all are representing that, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, what's really nice. I mean, and same kind of goes for us. I mean, even though we're literally down the street from y'all, I mean, being on two different campuses, no matter how close or far apart they are, it can still feel like different worlds at times. And and same for us. Obviously, we didn't like see you a whole lot, but what was kind of nice and what's great about Abilene in general, and what we've talked about before, is that each of the campuses that are in our town, they're each very different from each other. But what's we're very lucky to have is that the music scenes on all three of the campuses are pretty good, especially for the relative sizes of those programs and those campuses. And there have actually been multiple times where Hardin-Simmons, ACU, and McMurray, we've all combined like choirs, for instance, or bands or whatever, and done joint concerts, and that's always been kind of a fun moment to kind of come together and make music.
Yeah, I went to ACU as an undergrad, and I was here in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I find to this day, I'll come across people and we get to talking about our time in Abilene, and maybe it's someone who went to Hardin-Simmons or McMurray. I went to ACU. Uh, and we start connecting the dots, and we realize, oh, we sang in that choir together. We sang the Beethoven 9 together, or the Carmina Burana, and those kind of serendipitous reminders of the music that we shared, even if we have kind of lost track over the years and gone different ways, is pretty special. So yeah, I'm glad that continues today. Next spring of 24, we'll pick up that torch again and do the tri-college choir with the Abilene Philharmonic. So it's a really special collaboration.
I think did we only do it one time during our 4 years?
When we were in school at HSU, I think it was just the one time.
We did the Mozart's Requiem, and that was just like such an awesome experience. Like it's still one of my favorite works to this day.
Yeah, I remember the Mozart. That was a special concert. That lifting, that kind of heavy, those major monuments of choral orchestral music for a program the size of ACU or Hardin-Simmons or McMurray would be really difficult, if not impossible. So to combine our efforts to do a piece like the Verdi Requiem, and that's a really special thing. I'm glad that we're still doing it.
Yeah, and you don't see the HSU, ACU, and McMurray football teams playing together on the same side.
That's right. You have to put your ego aside, when three college conductors get together. There are no shortage of opinions. And then, of course, the maestro from the orchestra, we all have to put our heads together and make this an ensemble. And so the desire to do that and to do it, I think, effectively and beautifully all these years has been a real testament to the spirit of not only each individual place, at ACU or Hardin-Simmons, but just the ethos of this community. I don't know of anything like it. I'm sure there are other places out there that do something like this on a regular basis, like we do. But if there are, I don't know about them.
Now, how long have you been at ACU as a choir director?
This is my 9th year as the director of choral studies. Before coming to ACU, I was teaching at the high school level. Never really thought that I would come back to Abilene or certainly to ACU as a faculty member. But yeah, I'm finishing my 9th year here. It's gone by in a flash.
And so just to backtrack, I mean, would you mind telling us just kind of how did you come to do music in the first place? I mean, what experiences led you kind of down that path to where you are now?
I would say at home, we did not listen to sophisticated music. I'm the first person in my family to finish college. My parents supported us. My siblings and I, they supported us in our music endeavors. My sister was in orchestra for many years. My brother was in band for about a week. That didn't stick, but uh, and I was always in choir. I think about that a lot. They supported us, even though I don't think they really understood it, but they saw value in it and encouraged us to pursue it. The church we attended growing up was an a cappella church, no instrumental accompaniment. And I didn't realize it at the time, but from the earliest age, just being immersed in music. And we were 3 times a week church people back when people did that. We were a Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night church type family. And being bathed, particularly in vocal music, singing in parts, not particularly beautiful, right? A cappella congregational singing is not particularly refined, or we're not all matching vowels, or even all of us singing the same notes or the same rhythms. But there is a beautiful commitment to embodying our faith through music and word. Looking back now, having been a choral conductor for 20 years, 20 plus years, I was never in orchestra or band. I was always a choir kid. Having this connection to music and text, that's been with me from the beginning. I always wanted to be a choir director in high school. When you take all those tests about your interests and trying to point you towards a career, choir was it. Music was it. Being a teacher was the only thing I ever wanted to do, in part because I had fantastic teachers. I had really inspirational teachers, really skilled, highly effective, highly engaging teachers who helped set me on this path. So I never wanted to do anything else. I don't think I could do anything else. I don't have any other skills. I don't know what else I could do. I could probably be a tour guide or a travel agent. But I remember singing the William Byrd Ave Verum Corpus, this wonderful late Renaissance motet. I was a sophomore in high school. We were getting ready for UIL, concert and sight reading, like lots of kids do in the state of Texas every year. What you're doing right now, and being totally transfixed by those sounds, by what the whole package, the whole piece sounded like, not just my individual part, right? But getting this picture of the whole sound world of William Byrd, and in particular in that piece, that's been with me forever. And I've never taught that piece because I'm scared to death of it.
I feel like a lot of I mean, obviously not just educators, but also just musicians in general. We all have like some sort of moment that sticks out to us, specifically when it comes to like being in the music, like performing it, where it just kind of clicks.
Yeah. No, I remember working on the bird in my high school choir room. I remember where I was sitting. I remember what the room looks like from my perspective on, from the bass section on the third row or whatever it was. I remember the clinician who came to work with us, and in particular, that moment just really made it an impact on me, and yeah, it's been with me all these years.
So after you graduated from ACU, did you start teaching right away, or what did it look like after you graduated?
Yeah, I went to the Dallas area. My wife and I settled in the Metroplex, and I taught for 3 years. I taught middle school for 1 year, and quickly found out that was not my calling. I have tremendous respect for teachers who work with middle school students, but I knew pretty quickly that was not my cup of tea. So I taught for 3 years total before going back to graduate school. And I went to grad school full time at LSU in Baton Rouge. I had an amazing experience there with Dr. Ken Fulton. I realized pretty quickly that I had pretty much operated in a bubble, both musically and in every other way. And so going to Baton Rouge really it broke the bubble. It burst the bubble in a completely good way, because I realized in part all the things that I didn't know. That's why you go to graduate school, and why, in my opinion, educators, music educators in particular, need to go teach for a few years before they go back to graduate school. You go to graduate school in order to fill in the gaps of what you don't know. There's a lot you don't know when you graduate as a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I still don't know as a 42-year-old. For music educators to go out and to get real world experience, to teach and conduct before they go back to graduate school, I think is a really important thing. So yeah, we went to Baton Rouge. We were there for 2 years. Came back to the Dallas area. I taught for another 7 years at the high school level before coming to ACU.
Do you, well, let me first, because I kind of want to ask about how you go about advertising music on at ACU, for example. But first, I want to ask, I mean, I'm just curious, as far as, the program like at ACU, for example, have you been able to see that the choral or music program in general grow since you first came there?
Yeah, I've really worked on building the non-major experience in our choral program here. ACU is a liberal arts school, and they're not here just to study science or just to study music. But there's a wide variety of different types of subject matter that they can pursue. And I think when those future doctors and those future businessmen and women, those future teachers, when they sing in my choir, I think it activates a different part of the brain. I think it engages their souls and their creative, that creative part of their lives. And so I'm really proud of the engagement with non-music majors. We've taken a hit over COVID or after the pandemic,
Yeah, we all have.
like everyone has.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that we can turn that around. But today in my my university chorale, my mixed choir, pre-COVID, we probably would have had anywhere from 70 to 80 singers in that ensemble. This semester we'll have 45 to 50. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to turn that around.
Let's take a quick break from this episode so that I can tell you about this podcast's primary sponsor, Christian Fortner Music. That's right, my own music business. If you're looking for fresh new music ranging anywhere from middle school choir to college level orchestra, there's a good chance I'll have it. And while I am a young composer, my music library is constantly growing as I write more and more. The way I sell the music is a little different from other music retailers as well, which I think you'll like. Instead of purchasing a minimum number of individual copies or parts, you'll purchase one PDF that includes all parts in it, of which you can print out as many times as you need. That way, you don't have to stress about purchasing a new part that you misplaced or feel the shame of only purchasing 10 copies for your ensemble of 40. Come on, we've all done it before. Now, if you'd like a sample of what my music is like, you can actually receive a completely free piece of music from a certain selection when you sign up for my mailing list. Plus, you'll be a part of other fun perks, such as receiving monthly updates from me and early access to podcast episodes such as this one. If that's something you'd be interested in receiving, you can do so at christianfortnermusic.com/mailings. Just before we go any further, you might have said it a minute ago, the connection got a little unstable for a minute there, but how many different ensembles do y'all have at ACU?
We have two traditional concert choirs. The a cappella chorus is our flagship ensemble. In choral music, university chorale is a mixed ensemble. So those are our two concert choirs, for lack of a better word. I don't know what the right label is on that, I guess. We have our gospel choir, directed by Samuel Cook, one of my colleagues here on the vocal in the vocal area, and I'm currently leading and overseeing 3 contemporary a cappella groups. We have a freshman mixed group called Foundation. There's an upperclassman treble ensemble called Grace Note, and a upperclassman mixed group called Hilltop. And I lead those groups in conjunction with student leaders. There's a lot of support and leadership from student leaders and even some former students. Currently, Grace Note is being led by a former student, an alumnus of those groups, and she's come back to help with Grace Note, which is really awesome.
So then my next question with that then is, having that variety of ensembles, first of all, that's really is a blessing to be able to have, I would imagine, to have that much of a variety of ensembles on any campus. Going back to what you were saying earlier, you're really passionate about really just exposing people, even people that don't have much experience with music, to the possibility of choir and of music. Is there anything that you've done at on ACU's campus to kind of do that, as far as using your choirs to show other people on campus, like, hey, look, we're here, you can join us?
Well, social media is a huge thing. We try to have an active and engaging social media presence, particularly on a college campus. This is a little bit different, I think, than high school or middle school campuses, but on a college campus where that's so large and diffuse and everyone's going 30 different directions. Here on this campus, the music building is on the far edge of campus. Like, I never go on campus, basically. I'm right here on this kind of corner of this campus. And so, yeah, social media is our kind of gateway to the rest of the world, I guess. We do all the things that middle school and high school students, middle school and high school teachers do. We tour, we perform as much as possible, and we're very intentional about putting our information out and making our performances a hospitable and welcoming place. I think about that not only in terms of just recruiting students into my program, but for the benefit of the art form, we need audiences. For an audience to come and listen to an hour, hour and a half of music, I think creating a space that where they feel welcome and even engaged in the music making. On a lot of concert programs, you'll see the rules about concert etiquette, right? No cell phones, no talking, no crying babies. It's all the no's, right? It's all the no's. Don't get up while the music is being performed. Don't applaud until the conductor puts their hands down. I've been to countless concerts where the teacher, the director, gets up and welcomes the audience and then goes through that list of no's. And I know it's important. It's a part of the education of both the students and the audience. They may not know that you don't applaud until the conductor puts their hands down. Of course, there's an element of education, but what I feel so often when I'm in these situations as an audience member, I feel so unwelcome. I feel like I feel like the teacher, the director who is completely well-meaning is wagging their finger at me and telling me all the things that I shouldn't be doing. And so, you know, in my concert programs, there are no don'ts. There is a kind of a bulleted list of what you might do as an audience member. And uh, I give them quote unquote permission. They're going to do it whether I give them permission or not. But I give them permission to get on their phones. If you've never heard of this composer before, or if you're interested in this piece or this style, get on your phone and Google that, right? And then put your phone down.
Yeah.
And listen to the music. As an audience member, right? What are you supposed to do? What am I supposed to pay attention to? Music is a very esoteric thing, right? It's just sound and it disappears into the ether. So, yeah, listen for these elements in the music. Look at the performers, right? That sounds like such a basic thing, but notice the performers. What are the singers doing? What is the pianist doing? What does this room look like? We have some wonderful churches and concert halls here in Little Abilene, Texas, and they're beautiful places to perform in. Look around this beautiful church sanctuary and take in the the stained glass and the columns and the lighting and the architecture. Take it all in, right? And so, in my teaching, when again, it's a paradox. I've got to get kids into my program. Like, if I want to have a job, I need to have singers in my choir. But it's more than that. That's just the very beginning level. Yeah, after you get them in the door, then the real fun begins.
True.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's something that's something we talked about today in admissions, right? I mean, that's something you talk about all the time. It's like recruitment is one thing, but retention is another.
Yeah.
And we always use, when it comes to just getting people to the university, we use the illustration of a funnel. So because at the top it's much wider and you have all these people coming in, and then the further down in the process they go, it kind of people start filtering out until you get down to the specific group of people that completely fit, we completely fit what they're looking for, and they come through and they register and they're here at the university. Great. Boom. We've got them through. And in many ways, as an admissions counselor, that's kind of where the job ends in many ways. But for them, all that's happened is they've gone through that quote unquote funnel and they've gone right back into a new funnel, which is their experience here. And then the whole thing restarts, because now it's just another level of a funnel of, okay, well, now we have all our students here, and now they're going to start experiencing things on our campus. And our hope, right, is to keep by that point as little people as filtering out as possible. And I think that applies even on a smaller scale to your music program. Is what can you do once they're here to retain that atmosphere of inclusion and fun and those different experiences. And I really like what you said too about when it comes to the audiences as well, and the list of no's. It especially in our generation today, I feel like it's when people can barely sit still, and they can barely even be told what to or to not do. It's when you really look at it on paper, it really is kind of a recipe for disaster. But I think that's cool what you said about you want to give your audience something to do, otherwise they're going to find something to do on their own.
Yeah.
Well, we've had kind of a multi-part concert going over several years. I call it a sing instead of a concert. And the idea is that the audience is actively involved in singing along with the choirs that are on stage. So whether that's a hymn or, kind of a all stand and it's a processional type hymn at the beginning of the concert, or, I've kind of more or less kind of rewritten some parts in some pieces that we're doing in the choir that, this is very tuneful, and this would work in a large group setting. And so let's kind of tweak this piece a little bit. I'm sure the composer's fine with it, right?
Yeah, they should be.
Yeah, they'll be fine with it. We tweak it a little bit so that there's a refrain for the audience, and we print the music in the audience, and the audience gets a part in the show. We've done crayons. I bought a gazillion like mini packets of like 3 crayons or whatever, and we passed those out at the door, and there was coloring involved. I think choral music, as we know it in the Western world, when we think of choral music was born in a multi-discipline environment. In other words, the church. Choral music was born in the context of liturgy. And traditional liturgy involves sight and sound and touch and movement, and this thing where now audiences are expected to be completely still and completely silent, completely focused on the performance, a performance of music for which they have no connection. It's probably in a foreign language. It's probably written by a composer they've never heard of. It was potentially written 400 years ago in an aesthetic and aural universe that is completely foreign. And we expect people to sit through that?
Yeah.
So I value the quote unquote traditional concert, and we do that. We do plenty of that. But I also have a mind toward, like I said earlier, of making our performances, not only for the audience, but also for the singers, a welcoming space.
I think that's something that like we're at a point in history where I think a lot of directors are starting to have to really explore that style of innovation. We interviewed Darcy Radcliffe a few episodes ago, and that was one of the biggest things that she talked about was, with her string program, she created Revolution Strings, which was a new, fun, and more interactive way for people to play stringed instruments while still interacting with their audience, which is something that is normally very hard to do, especially with a physical instrument, even more so than with singing. And Yeah, we just live in a day and age where you're exactly right. Expecting people to just walk into a room and sit there for forever and just do nothing but listen. I'm not even necessarily saying it it's not supposed to be that way, or it's a bad thing, but you got to kind of roll with the punches, I guess.
Yeah, there's a place, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? There's a place for the quote unquote traditional choral concert. Sometimes you go to the mountains and you just sit on the front porch of your cabin and you just sit and watch the mountains because they're stunning and beautiful and inspiring. And it's the same with the concert. There are concerts where we want the audience to come and just experience the work, and it doesn't. I'm not talking about it doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It doesn't have to be the Bach B minor Mass, or I mean, for middle school, middle level students, it's absolutely music that is appropriate for that age and that voice. But even at that level, there is music that inspires and captivates the attention of not just the singers, but the audience. And so I don't want to give up the traditional concert. At the same time, here's that paradox again. At the same time, I think it's important that we explore other creative approaches to engaging with our audiences.
You're exactly right. And I feel like lots of times that we've seen those kind of scenarios happen, and it's easy to. I mean, you can even have a mix of that in a concert. I mean, that's totally programmable. So for sure, that's something that hopefully the more this sort of discussion happens, the more people consider it. And you're right. I mean, we don't want to make it sound like we're just throwing out the the tradition and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But
And like I've even noticed, I mean, I've noticed this happening for years, but just taking advantage of your ensemble during the concert, like moving them around or maybe having them walk up the like auditorium singing.
mhm.
I mean, it just a change of pace like that is also just really interesting and eye-catching to the audience too, and makes them feel like they're a part of it as well.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be like super fancy or anything.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the directors. I go to a lot of concerts here in Abilene, and I think the choral directors here in our community really get that. You see that, like my kids. I thought this was just so brilliant. I have a seventh grader and an eighth grader, and at the Christmas concert during the transitions between choirs, Mrs. Ransford, their choir director, had students up on stage playing instrumental solos. So there were a handful of piano kids who've taken piano lessons, and so they played their little Christmas solo that they probably performed at their little piano recital around the same time. I know there were band kids that played selections from the music they were working on in band, and it was maybe just two or three instruments and completely and utterly out of context for,
Yeah.
for that piece. But what a cool idea to facilitate movements, to make that period of time meaningful, and to give the students an opportunity to express their creativity, and to just kind of relish in all the different sounds. I mean, it wasn't just a choir concert, in other words. Like, we had these instrumental interludes. I think that's brilliant. Like, yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be fancy. It just like I don't know. I really am at the point where it's very difficult, and maybe this is just me. Maybe I just I don't have the ability to sit still, but it's difficult to sit through a concert with really long transitions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like in between ensembles. And you can fix that so easily. It doesn't even have to be in between ensembles. We have a concert coming up in February 21st, a varied program of American composers. And in between sets of music, we're going to play some of these, some of them might be historic recordings, right? I mean, you might think about the really famous recordings of Martin Luther King Jr. or of Leonard Bernstein in his Young Audience series. I hope to include the Library of Congress, I believe, has a collection of recordings from the field of former slaves. So these are recordings from the early 1900s, right? Interviews, personal firsthand accounts of these people's experience as enslaved people. And so we're gonna intersperse these American voices, these not only sung voices in the choir, but these speeches and readings and narratives that describe in parts in their own way the American experience. We're again, we're just trying to be creative and capture people's imaginations, and not just the audience, but also my singers. Right? I haven't done a scientific study, but my gut tells me today I have to be more proactive in preaching the gospel of choir, even to choir students.
Before we wrap up here, could you just tell our listeners, where they can find you online and your choirs and keep up with you?
On social media, ACU Choirs is our handle, both on Instagram and on Facebook. acu.edu/music is our website on the university website. Yeah, it would be really, really neat to connect with people. The online community, I think, is just a start. So let's connect on Instagram and then come to campus for a visit, or come to a choir concert here in Abilene. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
Perfect. And we'll have all that social media linked in the show notes, so you can go and be sure to follow them. And y'all's a lot of y'all's concerts are on YouTube as well, right?
We don't have a YouTube page or a YouTube channel. They do live on YouTube for a while. That's kind of a ongoing. We got to figure that out.
Sure. Oh, and concerts in general, and copyright and digital rights, that's always kind of a hard thing to figure out in general, but cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for being on the show today. We really enjoyed this conversation, and yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Kara. It's been a real pleasure.
So, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Beyond the Measure, a podcast for music educators. We hope you learned something that will help you stress less about how to teach, so that you can focus more on who you're teaching. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a rating and review, subscribe, and share this podcast with other music educators. See you in the next one.